What's up everybody? Welcome to Collecting Cards 101. Today we are talking about starting off and what you need. So for most people it is a little bit difficult to collect cards and they need a little bit of push. So starting off, I am not somebody who is the best card collector out there. I don't even think there can be a best card collector out there. I don't have the biggest deck collection out there. I don't have the smallest deck collection out there either. But I have learned a lot through my past and experiences to try to help people who are starting off and see if I can get them to flourish and have them have a great collection that they feel passionate about. Today I have gathered 10 tips to help you start your deck collection and make it as wonderful and as exciting as it can possibly be. Now before I begin, I do want to say one thing. Again, referring back to me not being an expert at this, it's just something I've learned. A lot of these things are going to be my opinion, so for a lot of you out there that may not agree with me in some of the things here, that is totally fine. I mean, I do like to hear things from different people. We're all different for a reason. That is why Magic community and card collecting community is so cool, because we are all different. So if you all have any other feelings or any other thoughts or recommendations for others out there trying to start the card collection, please leave them down in the comments below. We'll be more than happy to go over them. So let's begin. All right, so tip number one, and that is passion. So why do you need passion to collect cards? Well, it is quite simple. Without passion, you probably wouldn't be here watching this video. Passion is what's going to give you that drive to keep collecting and making your collection as big or small or rare as it may be. Passion is what's going to give you motivation to keep collecting and keep buying, alright? And this is what's going to make it awesome. So that is one of the most, or if not the most important key in this, is passion. Let's talk about tip number two. So tip number two is probably just as important as tip number one. Tip number two is patience. So if anybody out there is going to tell you about card collecting, you better be prepared for this one, patience. So if I can go back in time a little bit, I do remember when I was starting to collect cards as a younger kid, and it was something that happened over time. I started off with these amazing decks from Illusionist that I was just drooling over, and it started off with 1 or 2 decks, 3 decks, and I had a little pile, I remember, and I was just so proud of that. But up until this point now in my life here where I'm at, my collection has just grown dramatically. It is just, I couldn't have imagined I have a collection like that back when I was 13 years old, right? So you're gonna need a lot of patience if you're gonna wanna make your card collection as best as it can be, right? Because out there is so many decks of cards, you just don't understand the saturation in this market, which is another tip I'll talk about here in just a second. But there is so many out there that starting off is practically mind-blowing. Where do you start off? Do you go to illusionist.com, theory11.com, dananddave.com? It is so difficult to start off, and I mean, I'll recommend a few here in a little bit, but patience, guys. Tip number 3. So tip number 3 is also very important, and it is what's going to be the root of your collection. It is actually really important as well, and that is money. So how much of it, right, are we talking about? It depends. It depends, because you also earn your money back with some decks. Most of the decks you do earn your money back with. Collecting can be for 2 reasons. You can be in it for the resale, or you can be in it for your personal reasons, right? You just love collecting it as something that is very, you're driven by it, right? And you like to share it with other people. And that is just like me. I do it for personal reasons, not for resale reasons. But money, how do you manage it? You're somebody who still lives with their parents, birthday money, right? Christmas money, allowances, everything, save up, right? And you want to make sure that you don't waste all your money on cards, right? Growing up, you want to keep this notion in your mind that they're not everything, all right? It's just part of it's a hobby. It's what you do on the side. So just don't let it take over, right? You may see other people with a bigger collection with rarer cards, but don't let it take over and consume you and have you spend all your $100 that you've earned within the last 6 months on it. So be very careful on how you spend your money, and make sure that when you do spend your money, they're on the right decks of cards. And what I mean by that is you don't want to just go and throw random decks into your cart and then buy it and have them for your collection. You want a strategy, you want a plan on how you're going to start collecting cards. Collecting cards is, you can do them by groups, right? You can do all Theory 11 first. You can do all, that's the easiest, because I'll go over this in a later step, but Theory 11, you can knock them out, all right? It might take you months, it might take you years, but knock those out first. And then try to get the Theory 11 rare decks, right? And then you have your Theory 11 section. Then you do your Dan and Dave's, your Illusionist, the Blue Crown. You keep going, right? So that's what I recommend on how you spend your money, is by section, right? Do by company, and sooner or later you're gonna have a deck collection, and you're gonna be so proud of having the sets of cards. So just remember, with money, be very careful with it and how you spend it on cards. Make sure to make the right decision, and again, don't spend all your money on cards. Tip number 4, that is an important one too. It is handling and finesse. What I mean by handling and finesse is not to be somebody who can, is a god at card manipulation, at cardistry, or somebody who has practiced Magic for years and is just excellent with a deck of cards. All I mean is someone like me. You've seen me on my channel before, how I can handle a deck of cards decently, but I'm not the best. And that's something that I would recommend for you. Learn how to handle a deck of cards like you see here. I can grab them, I can move them around without dropping them on the floor. Right? Make a cut with one hand, and even spread with 2 hands. That is handling and finesse. It is not the best handling in the world, I guarantee you, but I can tell you that you're going to preserve your cards a lot longer, and not only that, you're happier when you get a deck of cards and you can handle it as well as you can. You don't want to start a collection and drop your cards all over the floor and bend the edges, right, and save them and put them away for later, and when you come back for them a few months from now, you're going to be pissed that you dropped your cards and you dented or you split the card. And that is something that is very important when you're starting a card collection, is knowing how to handle your cards, right? You also want to have very clean hands when you handle your cards in your collection, because some of those decks that you may get may be very rare in the future and you don't even know them yet. And when you handle them, you don't really want to get the edges dirty, right? Or when you play with whatever is in your collection, you just want to always make sure that they're clean, right? Save the hardcore handling for a normal bicycle deck. But for what's in your collection, take good care of it. I guarantee you will be angry in the future if you do otherwise. All right, so tip number 5, and that is, should you resell, right? This is my opinion, right? You all may have your own, but for somebody who is just getting into this, you might want to know, should you resell what you buy? And there are 2 kinds of card collectors out there. There is card collectors that collect for resale value, and there are other ones that collect for their sentimental purposes, right? Just someone like me, I love opening the drawers that I have all my decks in and seeing what beautiful artwork is in there, right? Now, should you resell? Well, if you're somebody who's doing it for resale purposes, obviously, and if you're doing it for your personal self, I feel like you could resell to get yourself some other decks of cards, but it depends. So if you buy 2 or 3 of the same deck, I would say keep 2 and resell the one that you're not using. Maybe you have 1 open and 2 sealed. I would sell one of the sealed ones and buy yourself another deck with that money. As I mentioned earlier, you're always almost going to gain a profit off of the deck you buy. So you're going to instantly gain profit, so you're able to buy another deck. So that's what you're going to probably want to do, all right? If you're hurting for a little bit of cash and you really want a deck that's coming out in the future, for example, Theory 11 releases that, hey, next week we're going to do this and that, whatever. Resell one of the sealed decks, get your money for it, and use that, right? Use it to your advantage. So should you resell? The answer is yes, but it depends, right? If you have 3, I would say go for it, sell 1. But you always want to keep 1 open, 1 sealed, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So tip number 6, where are the best places to buy cards? This is a very good one, okay? Very good one because nowadays it is quite difficult to start, as I mentioned earlier. So where do you start? So we have Illusionist, right? That's number one. We have Theory 11, we have Dan and Dave, which now uses Art of Play, but you can still buy some cards off of Dan and Dave. Art of Play, as I mentioned, and rareplayingcards.com. These are just a few so that you can go ahead and take a look at and start. And once you start off with these few websites that I mentioned here, you'll be able to take off and go on your own and see if you can find some other websites. eBay is also another one of those websites that you want to buy off of if you can't find the deck that you're looking for. So those are just a few websites. Go ahead and check them out. I guarantee you'll like it. So now we have tip number 7, and tip number 7 is going to be how many of the same deck should you buy and what to do with those ad cards. So how many of the same decks should you buy? The quick answer to that is 3. And as I mentioned in one of the previous tips here, you always want to keep one open, one sealed for a healthy collection. And in case you ever needed to sell the other one, you could go ahead and do so without it hurting you too much. So 3 is a quick answer to that. And what to do with your ad cards? Well, as you see here, I've displayed them in such a way that it looks really, really cool. And this would be perfect if we were to hang it up in a frame and make it sort of like an uncut sheet. Recently I had the idea to do this with some of the other ad cards that I had in my collection. Here is a complete one. We have pretty cool cards in here. Not all of my collection, by the way, this is just a percentage of it, along with these. And you also have to keep in mind that not all decks of cards have ad cards. For example, some decks of cards only come with blank cards or double backers. And to be quite honest with you, I don't recommend removing those from the deck only because it takes away from it. So let's go back and answer the question again. How many decks should you buy? Answer is 3. And what to do with your ad cards? Frame them, it looks really pretty. So number 8, let's talk about the oversaturation of playing cards. Recently, in the past 2 years, 2-3 years, it has been very difficult to keep up with what's coming out. I honestly don't even buy what's on Deckstarter, or Kickstarter, I'm sorry, anymore. I feel like it is very, very, very difficult. I know I keep repeating myself like a broken record, but back then, I want to say when I was in middle school, Illusionist was just coming out and it was just amazing. My mind was blown with the Black Tiger deck, the Tally-Ho Vipers, the Shadow Masters, the original, the OGs. And that was so easy to keep up with, right? You bought a deck, a few months later you could buy another deck and you pretty much had them all. And then Theory 11 came out, which was awesome, right? Then they had another different selection. Theory 11 was more like the Brown Winds, the Centurions, a propaganda deck. Perfect, right? Dan and Dave came along as well around that same era. And Smoke and Mirrors lineup, just mind-blowing, amazing. You could actually collect them all. And then you had other people like Lance T. Miller with their Gargoyles deck that kind of went off on their own to make their own deck. That was also amazing. It was pretty cool to keep up with and see what these other artists are doing. And then you had YouTubers like Aether Cards, who also made their deck, which is the Vortex deck. I don't have that deck, by the way, and I'm really looking for one, so if you have one, comment down below, I might just pick it up from you. And about 2 years ago, you just see people on Kickstarter start to make their decks. Also, it was okay, you know, you kept seeing new things, it was just awesome, but now there's just too many people making them. I don't even know what's out there. Sometimes I hear names of the decks of cards, I don't even know what's going on. I don't even know who made it, I don't even know when it was made, I don't even know how rare it is. So I usually tend to stick with what I know. I don't really spend my money on the Kickstarter decks just because I don't know what I'm buying, and I just feel like it's very difficult and oversaturated. I'd rather save my money and buy it on something that I know, or that I have known, which is like Dan and Dave, or Theory 11, or Illusionist, or the Blue Crown. I'll save my money for places like that, but every now and then I'll pick up a Kickstarter deck. So that is tip number 8, is just knowing how saturated the market is. So we have tip number 9 now, and tip number 9 is, what decks of cards should you buy? So as we just talked about the market being so oversaturated, what do you buy? So somebody who's starting off in collecting cards, I would really recommend buying things off of Illusionist, Theory 11, Dan and Dave, Art of Play, Rare Playing Cards first. before you start moving on to the Kickstarter decks. I would also highly recommend purchasing some of those companies' rarer decks. For example, Theory 11's Propaganda deck, the Rebel deck. Those aren't so expensive, but they're really rare, so they're hard to find. I would definitely pick up a pack of Beast Stingers while you're at it, as well as the red Beast Stingers, the Expert at the Card Table. I would pick up some of the Smoke and Mirror lineup and some of the original ones. So not the V5, the newer V5. I'm talking about the original V5s, the Paper Denim, and the V6. I would also try to pick up V3s. They might be a little bit expensive, but that's what I recommend for you. If you have that, that's an excellent foundation. But if you don't have the money for that yet, then I just recommend getting what is on these companies. That is what I recommend for you. And any other collector out there that has a different mindset on this, you're probably thinking that you should go for all the Kickstarter decks and all that. That is totally fine. I mean, it's very difficult nowadays, like I mentioned, to see where you should start. But if I have any advice for you, it's to start on the decks of cards that are readily available. And I would also pick up a few original bicycle rider backs. Those are pretty cheap as well, but they don't make them anymore. And you know, it's an insider between all of us here, but Erlanger, Kentucky sucks, and we want the Cincinnati, Ohio stock and finish back, or where they used to print the cards. So it's pretty much up to you. As I mentioned, it's just my advice here. Go ahead, let me know what you think, and show me if you have and are starting your deck collection. Send me pictures, link them in the comments below. I'd love to see it. And lastly, tip number 10, you should always be proud of the collection that you have. Be proud. You're never gonna have a bigger collection than somebody out there, but you will always have the best collection. And that is just because you have chosen the cards that go in it, and it's what makes you happy. So don't listen to what anybody else says, not even to me. I just give you my advice and what I have learned through my past years of collecting cards. But always be proud of what you have, right? If you have 100 decks of cards and you're so happy and every single dime and cent that you earned went into that, be happy, right? And if somebody else shows you their deck collection, don't be sad. You will be there, trust me. And especially to all of you all out there that have a bigger deck collection, please give us your tips as well. We'd love to hear them. So again, tip number 10, be happy. It is your deck collection. And lastly, to round all this up, guys, I did want to say thank you for sticking this long into the video. If you did make it this far and you liked it and you actually learned something from it, give this video a big thumbs up and please share it with somebody that it may benefit. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please click part 2 right here to learn how you can keep your deck collection in mint condition and keep your cards super clean. There's really good tips in there, and I know you guys will like it. Thank you so much, and you guys have a great day.